Well, I would like to thank everyone for tuning in and watching. I'm here with my new friend Joe Enders. We were just talking a little bit. Say hi.
How's it going, guys?
Okay, let's not get too excited. Calm down, calm down. One thing I do want to talk to you about is a recent happening with your work. Could you share a little bit about that? What are some highlights before we drill down into it?
I was going to be working with college students mostly, and the most surprising thing about the whole thing is that I was actually going out on and working for a pro-life organization. It was out in Michigan. It was called Protect Life Michigan, and I was going to be a campus mentor. I was going to be working one-on-one with students, just working with them basically. And they just wound up calling me one day and telling me I was fired from the job, and I asked why, and it was apparently over social media comments that I had made.
Mhm.
So,
And do you mind sharing what those comments were?
I mean, I can't remember. I can't remember the exact words. I'll try my best to pull to pull up something similar to what I was talking about, or something like that. Well, some of the reasons I was fired were I was describing certain behaviors, like one of them was I called people I called certain behaviors. I didn't call any people really anything. I said thoughts and degenerates was a word I used one time, for example.
Mhm.
It's just like these behaviors are going to lead to bad behaviors and things like that. Just funny because this is a Christian organization, and that that behavior is condemned in a Christian circle. So I was actually a little surprised at that one. That was one of the reasons. The other reasons was is I was having a discussion with a woman who was she was basically talking about how she was basically her mother was a career woman and she was a great mother at the same time. And I'm like, that the two don't exist. And she made this all public, so she was comfortable talking about it, obviously, and she wound up admitting that she was raised mostly by a babysitter. And for me, I'm a traditional conservative person. I'm not necessarily okay with that type of lifestyle. And I said, your mother wouldn't need a babysitter if she was really focused on you. And I said, if you want to be happy in your life, you need to focus on family over your career. That's what I told her, and I don't see why that's controversial. Focus on family over your career, otherwise you're going to wind up, alone, divorced, depressed, or married to a loser.
So,
Good guys don't stick around for women who care more about their career than their spouse. So I mean, that's just kind of like what I was getting into with this whole thing. There's a reason divorce rates have been rising. There's a reason that as women grow in the workforce, there is there is less families, there's more single mothers, there's more. All of these things are skyrocketing, and it's because of the things that I pointed out. So I really didn't understand how that was. I was told that it was anti-woman attitude on the phone, because the anti-career woman is what I think they said on the phone, and I was like, anti-career woman. Well, I am anti-career woman if she's putting her career over her family. If she doesn't have time for her family, she's getting a babysitter, doing all those other things. So those things were all met. The other thing that they pointed out is a Facebook comment. These are all outside of work, by the way. This is in my personal time. The last thing was about what was it? They were saying. So I was talking to I think it might have been another gay person, as a matter of fact,
mhm.
about
Was this
my
one of your friends
experiences
or
with
just a?
yeah, just one of my Facebook friends on there. Many of them are gay, and many of them agree with the statement that I made, which is hilarious enough. There's actually, I believe a gay columnist writing a report on it about what happened right now for
Interesting.
over there. So I mean, he said he agrees with me too. He says there's no lie in anything that you said, and I'm like, well, yeah, I know.
So,
So I
so
said that most gay people that I've met have been very narcissistic. So the organization basically came around and they had told me that this violates our ethics policy. They said their ethics policy on respect and consideration for all people, regardless of race, sexual orientation, gender, all these other things. So they were talking about gender and sexual orientation was the specific
do you
was the
think
specific
that?
they
I
were trying.
mean, I mean, obviously that what you're saying is anecdotal. I don't think you needed to explicitly state that. Anyone can figure out that's just your experience. You're
Yeah.
not. And even if you were citing a study or whatever, that'd be that's the study. Go get mad at a study. But What would
I'd be
you?
curious. I'd be actually curious to look up a study on narcissistic
But
behavior in the gay community as
I
opposed
mean,
to the regular community. I'm just curious.
do you think that people have the right to be offended at something like that, in your opinion? Because I imagine you're
I mean,
somebody.
they have the right to be offended. Doesn't mean that I should get punished for saying it.
Well, do you
Right.
believe that the organization who fired you, do they have the right to fire you because they are offended at what you said, or they think whatever you said may be offensive?
I mean, it depends on and to what degree it gets to. But I mean,
Okay.
if it's getting to a
You
degree,
you
if
didn't
it's
think that
getting
it was bad enough? Is that what you're
well,
to justify a firing? Is that
I don't know. It was not bad. Well, what happened to me? No, that shouldn't justify a firing. I mean, I literally, and I had gotten into an argument with Brandon Straka from the Walk Away campaign about this too, and he was just like completely like trashing me, saying that he doesn't defend me, blah blah blah, and things like that because I speak out. I've spoken out against a gay lifestyle in the past, and he basically said that your attitude is indefensible, and I said, so Christian sexual morality is indefensible in your eyes, and he wouldn't answer the question. I mean, and that's it. He just said, don't bring Jesus into this, blah, blah, blah. Jesus never said anything about gay people. And I'm like, well, the Bible does, and Jesus is the Word. According to the Bible, the Word became flesh.
I mean,
So,
technically, I mean, he did speak on marriage, and he did. I don't know if Mr. Straka is aware of this, or anyone else in the homosexual community, but Jesus did talk about how a woman is to leave her home and a man's to leave their home and they're to become one flesh. So I mean, you could argue. I mean, I suppose you could make the argument. Well, he doesn't also say that about homosexual people, but he does kind of talk a little bit about marriage. So to say that marriage is a non-issue, I agree with you. It's kind of it's sort of like
exactly.
it's a red herring, you know.
Well, that was my point, and I think that the reason that this group fired me, especially when they claim to be Christian like that, is I mean, if you can't speak out on somebody regardless of sexual orientation, well, what if you believe the act? I mean, I didn't say anything about like all gay people. I wasn't referring to anybody for any all-encompassing group. I said most gay people I've met have been narcissistic,
Do you
and
think that
ask any gay person that question, and they'll tell you the same thing.
do you think that it would be an equal sort of statement for somebody to say, I think all Jews I've met are greedy? You think that's about the same thing? Just you think that's
Yeah, I mean that's and that's another thing I don't understand either is like you can make a statement like that, it's fine, like as long as you're it doesn't bother me when people say that.
yeah, it doesn't bother you. I don't know if you're Jewish.
I don't think it should bother a company either.
Well, I mean, the why? I mean,
Well,
what
why shouldn't it bother a company? Because it's just something based on experience that somebody's saying in their private life outside of work. It doesn't mean they don't like Jews.
Not as true. That I mean that could be a possibility.
You,
However, do companies have the right to remove somebody for saying something they don't like?
No. I mean, it
They,
depends on, well, like I said, it depends on the degree of what's being said. I mean, if you're going on the internet and saying that, and like speaking out against, and like, we need a, 2.0 Holocaust right now, or something like that, advocating violence and stuff outside of work, criminal activity outside of work, that kind of speech, yeah, I mean, yes, then you should be removed. As far as like my religious beliefs on sexual morality, absolutely not. Why should I be allowed to be fired for my religious beliefs on sexual morality?
so what if
They're
somebody
saying it's not respectful or considerate to promote my views to people that disagree with me.
the thing I'm trying to drill down on is the sort of metric that you use to determine what is something that's really not an offensive, it's just an opinion, it's something, as you described, Holocaust, advocating for Holocaust 2.0.
I mean,
What's the
I think a company should have the right to fire somebody for advocating violent or seditious speech.
Okay, that's what you're saying basically, is that if you're advocating for violence, that's fireable offense. But if you're not advocating, then
A
you should just
fireable offense, but it still should be protected free speech too, and in a
okay.
civic sense. In a civic sense, but I don't see how anybody should be fired for anything they say in their personal life that isn't violent or seditious.
Okay, interesting. So,
At
but
least,
I mean,
at least at this point, because I would have said that a company has any right to do anything they want in the past. Yeah, I'd say that you should be able to fire somebody if they're black if you want to. I don't care. You should be able to fire anybody for any reason you want. You have the freedom to fire anybody for any reason you want. You can not like their shoes and fire them. You know what I mean? And I would have said that in the
really
past.
believe that? Okay.
We've gotten to such a volatile environment politically that people are, the political sides are stratifying. People are going farther right. People are going farther left. Mm-hmm. Now that we're on these two different pendulums, people are saying extreme things to provoke thought and start conversations. And in order to be able, and in order for that to happen, you cannot be at risk of losing your job for advocating something different, something new, an opinion that is framed in a way that it hasn't been before, in a way that provokes thought, in a way that maybe makes people angry, but it makes them angry enough to talk.
Right. Now, keep in mind, one of the reasons why
my point is that the discourse is getting harmful. The discourse is becoming harmful. It's becoming harmful to have a discourse, and it's not because the discourse itself is harmful, right? The discourse is fine. The discourse isn't harmful. Nobody's going out and murdering people for their political beliefs in the United States right now. Antifa's beating people up. But as far as like,
well, I mean, there was that Bernie Sanders, former Bernie Sanders volunteer that did shoot up that Republican baseball practice. But
that's as statistically insignificant as Nazis in the United States marching. I mean,
it does happen. That's what I'm saying, is that people are getting violent.
It very, very rarely happens. They're not getting violence at a statistically significant rate to where we could say that we're in an unstable nation. You want to look at political violence, look at Ukraine. They threw their prime minister in a dumpster 3 months ago. Mm-hmm. That's political violence. That's an unvolatile state. We are moving into a volatile state, and that's why political speech needs to be more protected now than ever. That way a conversation can happen. You shouldn't, there's people getting their Chases, their PayPals shut down because of this. There's people losing their Facebook, losing their YouTube that's monetized where they're able to go and get money for. You cannot shut down political discourse like this. You can't have somebody lose their livelihood over a political or social discourse because society is trying to figure out who they are right now. The West is in a state of an identity crisis right now. We don't even know who we are, and there's the left side saying that it's subjective, and then there's the right side, no, here's our absolutes. So for us, we need to be able to go out there, and we need to be able to have that discourse so we can figure out what the heck we're going to be doing. And if I'm getting fired for that, I can't speak. And guess what? The left, who's saying everything's subjective, they're not going to get fired. There's nothing controversial about saying everything's subjective. It's me advocating for absolutes. If you can't argue for absolute moral sense, even if most people disagree with it and you get fired for it, you can't say that in society. That is erased speech. It's like, yeah, well, sure, you can say it, but you're going to wind up unemployed and on the street. That's not okay. That's a political discourse. My speech isn't violent or seditious. I'm not causing any problems by saying that a woman should put her family before her career. That shouldn't even be taboo in society. Unfortunately, it is, and it's a fireable offense now. That's a problem.
So I have one more question before we cut this episode, and that's on the agendas of different companies. So, for example, if you work for Chase Bank or Nestle, some sort of big corporation thing.
Sure.
Do you think that they should hold their employees to a different standard than, say, something like Planned Parenthood or something, or the NRA, or something clearly more partisan? I understand that Planned Parenthood and NRA are nonpartisan.
Right.
Legally speaking,
right.
Legally speaking. However, they do have an agenda that mainly is, operates under a partisan.
Right, but my job was catering to conservatives.
So
okay, so my views cater to conservatives, family values conservatives, mm-hmm. Christians in the United States, evangelicals, Catholics, all these different groups. My point is that I mean, sure, I mean an organization can have certain standards on that, but if you're working for a conservative organization and you're getting fired for having traditional values, well, being pro-life is a traditional value. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's sort of the point I'm getting at. That's a traditional reading of the value of life principle in ethics.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I do want to get more into the traditional, because you talked a lot about traditional conservative. I really want to talk more about that, but we're running out of time. Joe, thank you so much for coming on. This is a great conversation. You gave me so much to unpack and think about. Folks, make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Please throw in a comment and make sure to say hi to my friend Joe. Thank you so much again for watching.
Thank you.